There we go. And shall I share screen with the agenda? Is that the best way to go?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, welcome everybody, and hope everyone's had a nice break and it's good to be back. Let me just find where I've hidden the agenda before I try and screen share it. There we go.
You just shared it with us, didn't you?
No, I mean on screen.
Oh, right. Yes.
I had the link, I just couldn't find the actual window. So there we go. All right, yeah. So because we've had a month off, I hope I haven't been like overly heavy-handed by adding into the agenda kind of what we have done so far and what still needs discussing. And I'm not saying that we can't discuss other things, but it's just to help us stay on track. So yeah, without further ado, let's...
Sorry, Vanessa, I'm here also, just if you want to tick me off on the list.
Oh, right, yes, sorry, I meant to, but I didn't, did I? Nice one, thank you. All right, yeah, let's kick off with matters arising. And this is just really quickly to say, yes, it's been done, or no, it hasn't. So a couple of them are Treasury related. We were going to pay Alison and we were going to pay Stephen in August and Kenrick. Did they all happen?
Yes.
No.
The Kenrick and Stephen happened. I know we did pay Alison for the first two download slides.
I'm embarrassed to say I have to check. I don't remember what.
Sorry, so was that a yes, it is supposed to have been done? Yeah.
I just want to make, I know we paid her for, but we will pay her if there's any. I know Stephen and Kenrick is paid, but
okay.
Alison, I have to check. I know we paid her for the first two, but she's done more. So
yeah, let's just go ahead and pay Alison more. I'm
let's
good with
do
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the last meeting, we discussed the idea of adding something to the Fund 9 IOG survey. That came from you, Phil. Was there progress on that? Did it happen, or?
I contacted Danny about doing this, and he said, I'll quote it out, in theory, yes. But conscious of length, it depends on the form and scope. There are also some issues around data protection and post-distribution limitations due to coming from IO as an entity. Okay. So yes is the answer. If we want to put something simple in that doesn't require anything, but it does mean that we may not get the results that we want published,
right.
because it's an internal survey. So
okay. Well, we can talk about that when we get to it later in the agenda to decide if, you know, what we want to and if we want to. Just to let everybody know that we did miss adding something to Danny's newsletters a couple of times, but hopefully we will do it this time coming up. And we agreed to discuss kind of in Discord or asynchronously the process that we might go through to build a public register of parameters. That didn't really happen. So it's on the agenda. And if we want to pick it up and discuss it asynchronously after this meeting, we can.
Just a quick clarification. Wasn't there some discussion of that? I thought Stephen mentioned to me that he talked with someone about building a register of parameters.
I don't think there's been anything in Discord. I mean, he and I have spoken about it, but I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, I think the difference is that we had a one meeting, but not a way to do that asynchronously, so that everybody knows how to input information.
No, this was just about discussing it async. It wasn't about doing it async. Let's leave that till we get to it then. In that case, it was just really to alert people that it was on the agenda. It was on the minutes that we were going to talk about it offline, and we didn't. All right, so
okay, but Vanessa, let's just put a question mark there, because I think there was some discussion that happened offline. That's my only point.
Okay, cool. All right, so Treasury then. Andre and Miro.
Okay. So we're going to receive funds on Monday. We are going to receive $6,860 US. So we can pay for all the town hall slides, the remaining town hall slides, and then the remaining project management and the prep for Fund 9 proposal. So we can basically pay all the budget items except for we need to choose between surveys, reports, and retros. And then treasury management we can pay partially now and with the final allocation. So we just need to decide, are we going to pay retros and reports or surveys?
Any thoughts on that, anyone?
Much of much. I guess we could also pay half of each or something like that. But it doesn't really matter, I think.
Point of clarification. What was the preparation of Fund 9 proposal?
That's what I was going to ask as well.
That's just everyone who wrote the proposal. I think Stephen will
What proposal?
know who we
Yeah, I
need to
don't-
pay there. Yeah.
I don't think there is a proposal for Fund 9.
There's not.
Oh, okay. Well, then we could use that funds for something else.
Let's
It's
put that in the
okay.
town hall slides budget. No, I'll stop. I'll stop
Yes.
making jokes.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, half and half we could. Can I just check, have all meeting attendance, has that all been paid already?
Yes, yeah, that's paid in
So
full.
that's not
Yeah.
an issue. Okay. I mean, I would say reports and surveys, these are kind of both deliverables, and it feels to me like we don't know what exactly our deliverables and surveys are going to be. So this kind of speaks to that question of, are we going to pay the same way as we did last time, where it's just equally shared between everybody? Is that what people still, are people still good with that, or?
From my perspective, I think I put some of this in Discord. Philosophically speaking, at this point with this team, I don't have a strong preference. I think, though, that there is an argument to be made for setting a precedent and developing a process where the deliverables are paid. I think that requires much more work. And there's a part of me that's reluctant to engage in that amount of work, because the easier way is to just split it equally. But as far as sort of a best practices approach, I would lean more towards paying for deliverables.
Tivo, you've got your hand up.
I'm in the same boat as that. I'm fine with whatever decision majority group goes with, but if we go through the developers route, it will already kind of help us to give a way to show how would like cost, like if we say surveys, how much it would cost. We will get it wrong first, second, third time, but over time, maybe 1 or 2 years, we have a quite clear mind that, okay, this kind of survey, it's gonna take us 4 or 6 hours. It's gonna make us easier to write proposals and think of how much we can do and what the impact of all of doing all that may bring us. From my own experience, last fund in Catalyst School, I had the budget to do introduction to Project Catalyst. And the way I did it was everybody who contributed shared the tasks. So, okay, you're gonna do a report, you're gonna do a survey. Some did it in teams, some not. And then I just asked them to kind of report your hours. And beforehand, we also kind of estimated hours. So it didn't really take that much of a time. And after all that kind of calculated together, like this is how it goes out, and everybody's like, okay, and that's how it was sent. And there wasn't really like adjusting and changing stuff. It was like, this is what we thought it's gonna be, this is what it actually was. We used estimated times, but actual times was the information, so that if ever in future I need to do something similar again, I have some written material I can use as a leverage. Okay, this actually took more hours or took less hours. Of course, it's always depends on people, but it's kind of just paints a picture of how to reward deliverables.
Yeah, Phil, I can see your hands up next, but I just want to say quickly that I think there's 2 things to discuss here. One is, do we split the deliverables budget equally between the 4 areas? And then within that, do we split it equally between the people who are working on it? Okay, Phil.
Yeah, I've been experimenting with kind of a community distribution model of equal split and then an opportunity to choose to distribute your share to others. And I think I've mentioned this previously.
Yeah.
It's a simple spreadsheet basically, and you can offer up. I think Tevo was involved with one that we did ages ago about the community site. So it's kind of an interesting model. It based on each other's trust. It's got a bit of game theory in there as well. So it's quite an interesting thing because then everyone gets their money and then they choose to pay it out to based on their perception of what others have done compared to what they've done.
That's quite cool. Is that ready to use now if we chose to? Is that something?
Yeah, it's just a simple spreadsheet at the moment.
Okay, cool.
I plan to kind of put it into a tool and have the opportunity to maybe have it anonymous and things, but at the moment I haven't bothered to develop it much more than that. But it is interesting that like in one we did, I thought someone else had done more work. He saw that I did that and he counteracted it by giving the money back from his share, which was quite funny. So yeah, it's an interesting model. We can experiment with that as an option. It kind of reduces the workload of what Tevo's saying. There's a bit of admin load to get people to gauge their actual times, whereas this is kind of perceived times. So
yeah,
obviously you can put it out there and say, hey, look guys, I've done this and this, and like you can just kind of negotiate it out.
cool.
Yeah, so that's the model I like to put forward. If we want to experiment with it, when the time comes, I can take us through it and show that model.
I mean, I'd certainly be up for trying that. But Kenrick, you've got your hand up. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I like what Phil suggested, and I was just also going to add. Well, what I was going to suggest is that there's kind of three things to me. Is one is sort of a baseline that maybe you just split evenly and keep simple. Then there's specific tasks, that kind of goes with the things before this though. And then what you might do is have a bonus pool that if you feel, so that you can give a bonus to people who kind of put some extra effort into something, and maybe the bonus is decided on as a community along the lines of what Phil is saying.
Yeah, I think
that's maybe building on what Phil is saying. There could be a baseline that gets split evenly, but then there's a bonus pool that we kind of vote on. And that goes to, between like 1 to 3 people that put extra effort in.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that, is there anybody that would object to us doing it the way that Kenrick just suggested, where there is a kind of baseline, but I suppose we have to agree how much that is.
Yeah, I would say the model is easier, where you just give everyone equal share and then everyone works it out themselves.
Yes,
it reduces the admin and the mental load of working out how much should be separated out, I think.
So in the end, we split it evenly, and then we use your method to kind of, for people to reallocate as they see fit. And there's not like a baseline and then a bonus. It's just the lot.
Well, it kind of, the effect is the same, but it's based on an individual perception thing rather than some group decision that we'd have to work out how that would be decided, I think.
How would we handle this in terms of the timing of the payment distributions? Phil, how did you do that?
Well, it's a percentage-based thing. So once all the work's done, or as the payment's due, we can just kind of do it either once the work's done or as the payment's coming in, and kind of do the split. I mean, it works better once the work's done, right? Because then we can know exactly how the work was done. But
would the idea be to pay equally each month, and then at the end have sort of this true up process that you've described?
I think our idea is that, well, yeah, I mean, the monthly payments happen, or, I mean, we can turn off a month's payment if we want to postpone it and not have the funds sitting waiting. So that's an option as well. I mean, the mechanism doesn't really matter when or how the payments are done. It's not really relevant.
I guess it's whether anyone needs the funding in the early time, because yeah, it benefits of pushing it to the end on that model. But if anyone needs the funds, obviously it's not significant.
I think I'll just add that, like Henrik said, we've got tasks that are already funded with budget. So this is not for that. This is that extra pool that we're distributing for tasks that aren't assigned that people are going to pick up and do. So I'll just add that that's doesn't change what's already in place.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can, what we can do if you want to push those other ones to the end, if we pay Treasury in full, then there's 1,600 left. We can split that among everyone, and then at the end decide to, with your model who gets more with the last payments.
That seems possible. Do you know how much the last payment would be by any chance?
It will be 6,860. So we will pay surveys 4,008. We will basically pay surveys and reports and a little bit of retros or whichever. We can maybe we pay surveys 1,600, and when the last payment comes, we pay reports and retros and decide the last bit of surveys who gets what.
I think it might be causing an issue that in the end, this split between surveys and retrospectives it's not really how we're working anymore, is it? It's kind of all one thing. So I think we could just maybe rename that deliverables. Would that make sense?
Yeah, and there's also closing report, I guess.
That's true.
That hasn't been. I'm personally inclined to just leave the money in the account for now. It's not a lot, 1,600 of 6,000. If we lose half the value because ADA crashes, well, so be it, I think. I don't know what other people feel about that. The other option is to distribute it to everyone. I guess it's a $200 odd payment each or something. And then but then we don't know what it was for, right? Like why do we receive this payment? I'm not sure.
I'd be inclined to agree with Phil. Does anybody disagree with like leaving it with Treasury until such time as the deliverables are done, and then we can allocate it equally between everybody and use Phil's method to redistribute as needed?
Is anyone against? No.
Nope. Okay, so we're agreed, yeah? Nice one. And is that that's fine from a Treasury point of view, Andre? It's not going to cause any problems for you?
No, that's fine.
Good.
Then we just also need to decide for the Fund 7 proposal, CGO. I think there's also.
I thought that was already right. Sorry, talk me through this.
No. I think we are going to receive it on Monday.
Oh, the final payment.
Yes,
yeah,
the final
of course.
payment.
Okay.
No, you won't get the final payment. No,
Yes, we
so
will.
the final payment. Oh, excuse me, I lost track. You mean the final payment for Fund 7? Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah, that's probably like.
Did we agree? We'd have to go back and look at what we said is outstanding, wouldn't we?
I mean,
basically it was just service reports and retros, but
so it's basically deliverables payments, isn't it?
yes.
Why
there
don't
was
we?
There was talk of paying Stephen for project management.
Yeah.
And maybe also paying Stephen for all the work he did on the closeout report too. I don't know if that was funded, but that was a big effort.
Yes. So in total, there's about $840 worth in the wallet now, and we are. And
what's due for the Fund 7 closeout?
$6,366. So it's a little.
Sorry, say again. How much could you?
6,366. That's what we will receive on Monday.
I wonder if we can move on and maybe come back to this discussion
Yeah.
Just because we're going to spend too long.
No, I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
true. But what I was just tentatively going to suggest is once we've taken out what we need to pay Stephen for project management and closeout report, maybe we could trial Phil's method on this one and just see
Yep.
how it works. All right, town hall slides. Alison, any updates?
Yeah, well, they continue to roll along. And I think just to reiterate, I'm going to keep with the every other week cadence. I somehow seem to have gotten back to giving the update the day before the town hall. I mean, the day before our CGO meeting, which is not ideal, but maybe that'll get tweaked as we go along. And I like the plan of giving a quick recap of our history, giving an update of what's going on in governance, and then talking about catalyst parameter changes that have happened since the last update. That's kind of the structure I'm going with now. So if anyone else has any feedback on specifically what happened or general thoughts about how it could be changed, feel free to let me know.
Has anybody got any feedback?
Sounds good.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going really well. So yeah, I think stick with the format. Yeah. All right, the CGO board. The only question I have is for Stephen, who's not here, which is I'm not sure if it's me or him who needs to add a issue for each meeting that we have, because he's trying to sort of tie this in with payments so that it's clear what's been paid and what hasn't. So I think apart from that, it's just, yeah, the board is there, it's doing what it should do. Is there any comments or thoughts about it?
Very good.
Okay, I think we can move on then. All right, so this is the meaty bit of the meeting, is scope and deliverables. So I've proposed to take them just one by one and just try and go through and come to some decisions about exactly what the deliverables are for each one. Does that sound like a good way to go for everybody?
Mhm.
Okay. So challenge settings, we did agree that George and Phil are working on this, but we still have to determine exactly what its deliverables are likely to be. And there is also just something I wanted to throw into the discussion, which is, do we need to consider how to maintain and like be seen to maintain independence of oversight, given that George, you're kind of so strongly involved in working to change the challenge setting process? Is that a thing?
Yeah. From my perspective, it's that's something I'm definitely concerned about in terms of conflict of interest. I know. Obviously, I talked to Chris and Danny not too long ago about it. I had a busy August on separate stuff, so now I'm back on the horse. And I shared recently some of the stuff I'm working on. I should be having a meeting with Chris hopefully on Friday. I think it might be the plan, and I think he has some thoughts towards planning categorization, and Danny on Twitter very recently made it clear that there will likely be some changes sometime soon. So it's obviously keen on their head, keen on their mind. So because of that, and I will be involved with it, how people feel about that is definitely something that's worth talking about. But I guess the key thing that will come out of it is whatever discussion and approach they want to take is just to communicate that with what's going on in CGO, and that could be, because it's not going to be something that happens overnight. So it's something that could be very relevant for a survey. So let's say, they're thinking of doing X, Y, and Z. Whether that's with community feedback or with not, I don't know how ID are going to approach this exactly, because they have their own process, taking basically what we're given and those conversations, and then trying to convert that into how can we make sure the community is involved as much as possible, that we thought about all the problems and all those kind of things. So I feel that's kind of my responsibility, to make sure that communication is done as well as possible, and we try to get as many people involved as we can. Phil, I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. I know me and Phil haven't caught up recently on challenge setting, so.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly sounds like it could be an output, is some kind of yeah, whatever IOG are going to move on with this, trying to gather community feedback on it, maybe.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting whether, like, this is a parameter, how it's going to be implemented, right? And then whether George's work on it makes it so that it's implemented, and then we're reporting that it's been implemented because of George's work. It starts getting very interesting, I think. But at the same time, George is probably in the best position to actually give us updates of where it lies within the bounds of what can be reported back.
I mean, I think with you involved as well, Phil, on it, then I guess we have that kind of the independence of oversight coming from you on whatever comes out. But yeah, I would agree that George is best placed to keep us informed about it. Does anybody else have any thoughts on what the deliverable could be here, or how we maintain independence of oversight?
I think this is the best oversight we could have because we have the insight information. In previously, you mentioned that what was that? The conflict of interest is something that gives unfair advantage to that specific person or this network. However, the network itself is a catalyst. So it's been like odd that we would be trying to add barriers in front of George to get that information abroad, like what is planned, what is suggested. And yeah, I think we should keep this channel open.
I feel a key thing is the oversight needs to come from everyone else but me. I'm doing the work and I'm doing the communication, but like I'm not the oversight because I have a direct incentive, especially from proposals of that work. So everyone else is the oversight. I'm just the messenger basically of what's going on. And then any feedback you have, as well as surveys we do from the community, is what's really kind of making sure what's happening is above board and we're all kind of aligned on it. So I guess that.
I mean, in terms of what form our oversight takes and what the actual deliverable or output is, I sort of see an awful lot of discussion going on in your Telegram channel, George, and I'm wondering if maybe that is a place that we could look to gather community feedback. I don't know. Sorry, someone's got their hand up and I can't see who it is, I think. Oh no, they haven't. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, has anybody got any thoughts about how or what we actually produce? I mean, is it going to be a survey? Because although I think that would be a good topic for a survey, like what does the community think about whatever changes are actually going to happen? Surveys, you know?
Is proposal going to happen? This could be, might as well be deliverable.
Right.
Content, channel setting, or something.
George has proposals in Fund 9 working towards implementing these categories, right?
Well, yeah, for them being used in Fund 10, but it's not a change proposal per se. It's not saying we are changing the system. But obviously the response from the community is a form of intent kind of thing. Oh, you know, that we're supporting this to X degree, but it's not, not quite a change proposal per se.
I feel like maybe we need to think about exactly what the output or deliverable would be, and I think within what we've just said, what George has just said, which is he does the work, the oversight comes from the rest of us, maybe we need to see what is actually coming out of the meeting that you've got on Friday.
Yeah,
what's going on with that, to see what output we hope to produce. Does that sound fair?
I think that's a good approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only other, oh sorry, go on.
The oversight here is, I think, what you to add on that what you just said, that George has this meeting, has this like an what is like a conclusion of what's next steps, what are possible, and then that is communicated not just from oversight but from hopefully some other aspects that this discussion has been had, And then the oversight here would be to engage with the survey or some basically I think survey to what others think. If these discussion had merit, did they miss something, like some categories missing, or somebody doesn't want categories or has some other point to say, just to gauge how much is the sentiment for, like 10 people are against, the 90 are positive. So have that kind of sentiment analysis, and that could be the oversight that, yeah, this is what people responded on when we created the survey to these discussions. That's what you do with that information is up to you, but at least we are make that analysis.
Go on.
I'm still a bit lost here, because if I understand that correctly, kind of we have a change in the way challenges in itself are presented. Is that kind of the way? I mean, probably very vaguely saying that. So we have fixed challenges rather than kind of having a selection of challenges every single time, right?
It needs more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, there's considerations of changing challenge settings completely. Exactly how IOG see it right now is not absolutely clear cut. They've been taking in information from myself.
Let me say that a bit more generic in itself. There is a change in the way challenge is going to be set in the future, without more or less kind of taking the way or outcome into consideration.
The replacement of challenge.
A replacement. Okay.
Yeah, or a full replacement. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So
And
I think there are two things which I would kind of see on that one. So effectively, there are the way I see it is, on the one hand side, obviously, kind of it should follow a governance process in the sense of, this is the proposed change, and who actually is enacting that. So is it effectively based on a vote of the community to say, yeah, we agree to that, and then it goes through, or is it kind of enacted in a different way? That's the one side. And the other thing is, for sure, when you implement a change, the question which comes out of that one is the intent actually recognized. So can we see after a while, is what you intended to achieve actually achieved? And these for me are the two elements which we would have to cover. I'm very doubtful that a survey will kind of cover that, because the one thing is more or less recognizing the way of enactment of the change as such, and on the other side, did it actually achieve? And I mean, and in that context, it's probably a retrospective on comparing the intended outcome to the recognized outcome after a period of time. That's the way I would look at it.
That's really important. I'm just going to say here before I go to you, Kenrick, is that this is obviously a parameter change. So in a sense, it overlaps with what we're looking at in terms of parameter changes in general, particularly in terms of what Torsten just said about who is enacting the change and do people know what the purpose of it is. Kenrick.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't think every community decision has to be done by votes. You know, so voting is important. It's obviously part of a fundamental principle of decentralized organizations. However, if, as George and I think the others working with him are engaging with the community through conversations, they're engaging through things like surveys, and they're using this input to do a redesign, then that's also a decentralized process. Even if in the end, it's, you know, George and IOG that actually end up implementing this, because, you know, IOG is the one that's still running the Catalyst program right now. And they've made changes like this over the past year and a half in developing the Catalyst program. So yes, there's a, you know, desire to go to having more processes decided by votes, but not every process has to be decided by a vote.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Couple of other hands up. Sorry, I can't see who it is. Alison.
Yeah, I completely agree that not every parameter change can or should be decided based on a majority vote or even a plutocratic vote. The problem that I see, and again, I was going to come back to this with the parameter change oversight or the governance change oversight, is how much surveying, community discussion, one-on-one conversations, presentation, public presentation, how much is enough? You can always talk to one more person. You can always go to one more meeting. You can always do one more presentation. And unless you have an infinite amount of time to do that work, there's always the potential criticism of, well, it wasn't enough. That's not really legitimacy of the community. And so one of the things I think we as a Catalyst community really need to think about in terms of decentralized legitimacy for deciding on parameter changes is what does that structure look like, both to ensure that the decision makers and the implementers truly have done a wide, broad effort to get the community's feedback, however community might be defined, to ensure that it is a decentralized, broadly supported decision, but also to protect the implementers from the charge that, no, actually you didn't do enough, because it's always possible to do more. There's always the possibility that someone could say, well, you didn't talk to me or my group, therefore it's not a representative decision. So long-winded way of saying, we don't have a structure for determining what the community, well, first of all, we don't have a definition of community. We don't have a structure of determining what legitimizes decisions that are made by the community. And in the absence of that, it's hard to know how to make decisions if we're not voting. Now, having said that, I don't think voting is the answer. I completely agree with Kenrick. Voting's not the answer for every decision. But how do we create that structure is the open question. And again, just to, last thing on scope.
Henrik, can you let Alison finish, please?
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks. It's not, I don't think it's in CGO's scope to create that structure. So I'm calling that out as a observation, not as a problem that we in this community can solve.
Can I just say that I think it actually could be within our scope, but that comes under parameter changes, and it's kind of something that I think we should move to next. So I've got Torsten and then Phil, and then I'm going to suggest we move to parameter changes.
I'm happy with that. I mean, for me, the question is pretty much kind of what Alison said, as it is not clearly defined in how the delegation of decision making is done, if not through a vote, or in which cases a vote is required, and in which cases the power is given to a specific group of people or a circle or whatever, or it lies with IOG, as that is kind of unclear. It becomes really hard then to determine whether what is happening in itself is actually within the parameter of controlling the decision making and process and the power which is attached to that. Yeah. So if someone says we are making a change, and which makes change because we are IOG, and the other time they say, oh, the community has to vote, on which basis is that done? And it's, for me, actually not really clear. Yeah. And I mean,
It's a good question, but I'm concerned about the time of the meeting. And so I think maybe if you want to write it up as a question and look into it, that would be good. But for this meeting, that's a hard question to answer.
I don't think anybody's expecting to answer it now, but I think we're just raising it. Phil, can I?
Yeah, last night in the after town hall, there was a governance jam hosted by Drip Drops, and they're currently engaged by the circle to run the voting structure of the next circle. In their specification, they came up with a good point that they're building a petition module to their voting structure, and that kind of does fill some of the role of what we're talking about. So almost George's proposal at the moment would turn into a petition rather than a proposal, and would gather interest and support. So people are putting their signatures to the petition rather than giving a vote. So that's going to be a nice expansion to the governance structure. So I thought I'd just drop that in there right now, because it's kind of that's being brought forward and being implemented as part of the circle experiment. So yeah, that's interesting. There was a lot more in what people have just said, but I'll probably leave it there for now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there is stuff we need to come back to about exactly what we do with challenge setting, but we're going to come back to it in a next meeting. And all this stuff is kind of quite general. So if it's all right with everybody, I think I'm going to flip down to governance parameters now, because it just seems to tie in. We agreed that Alison, me, Torsten and Matthias are working on this, and possibly Andre as well. I think you've had conversations with Stephen about maintaining a register of parameter changes. And I think also, Phil, you've said you were interested in this as well. I'm not 100% sure on that. And we did agree that one deliverable would be creating, publicising and maintaining a publicly accessible register of parameter changes, which we will invite the community to contribute to, I guess. So what we've got at the moment is a Google form which people would fill in to say, I've spotted a parameter change. And then there's going to be a process of transferring that to a spreadsheet, which I think, Andre, you've talked to Stephen about possibly you could take on. Is that? Making that
yes,
up?
yes, I think I still need to talk to you about that.
Okay. But then we also, oh, sorry, let me just flip through these quickly. We did also suggest defining broad categories of parameters, and I think that's something we can only do later when we see what they are. But we also talked about the idea that the deliverable for this section could include suggesting a process that IOG or anyone else should follow in order to launch a parameter change, like how much community consultation do you need to do? As Alison was saying, who decides, who launches it, blah, 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 all that stuff. So that could be a second deliverable there. Right, so, sorry. Was that you, Phil, who was going to cut in?
No, it was me.
Oh,
It was
sorry.
actually me.
Go for it, Kirsten.
My only concern with an Excel spreadsheet is that you have to be able to demonstrate over time what actually has changed.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of pretty much for every parameter which you're spotted has been changed, being able to go back and say, when did we change this or when did we change that? And I don't know what an Excel spreadsheet in itself will give that capability.
Well, I'm not sure how you mean, because the spreadsheet just records, oh, this is a parameter someone's noticed, this is the date it was socialized to the community, this is the date it was put in process, blah, blah, blah. So
I think Susan's saying about the version controlling of the parameters, that if, let's say, we change from the 3000 ADA to the 500 ADA, we need to keep that record that it went from 3000 to 5000, what date it changed.
Yeah, that's what the spreadsheet does. That's the information that is in it.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at that, I mean, not that I say that this is the solution, but I would probably put that into something like GitHub, GitLab, or something like that, so that I have a full version history of what's happening.
Yeah, sure, we can do that, of course. But
Yeah.
I think what I'm seeing is that each line in that spreadsheet, each row in that spreadsheet, it's not going to change more than once. So let's say, for example, a parameter changes from, oh, I don't know, yeah, you have to have 500 ADA to vote to you have to have 1000 ADA, and then it changes again from 1000 ADA to 2000 ADA. That's a new line. So there's no need for version control.
I think the idea is that it's not a new line though, because
it should be.
It's the property of the parameter.
Nah, it's not. I think it needs to be a new line for each change. That's the only way.
Well, the problem with what you're saying, Vanessa, is that then that database will become so full that it won't be easy to organize it for things that, like, to understand what the current state is and the history of a particular parameter. So anyway, you might have to think through the design a bit of how that works.
I mean, in the end, I think it, you know, a spreadsheet is searchable. So, and we can always arrange it and organize it in terms of.
I think it's just the computer science side of things that.
Sorry, say again.
The computer science side of the people that are here that are thinking of the data structure, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure, and that's great. That, you know, that can be something else, but we're talking about something that anybody in the community can easily access and read and see. So I think it's kind of important that it is something accessible.
Yeah, I guess the point is that if you've got this ADA parameters, let's say, as an example, it went from 3,000 to 500, it's going to go down to say 100 next. That's the same parameter with a different.
Yeah, I'm aware that it's the same parameter, but a log is a change log, really, isn't it? It's what has changed. And so each change is a new.
But it should be able to be connected back, right? So you can see it went from 3,000 to 5,000 to 0, let's say. And
well, that could be really easily done by how we arrange the spread. I mean, if somebody's got a clear proposal for not doing it on a spreadsheet, then what is that proposal, please?
I think for now it's probably the place to do it.
You can do it. You can turn the spreadsheet into a JSON.
Okay.
Or just look for if the parameter's got a name, you look for that name and look at all the changes that happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for now, let's just do that and start collecting them, because we don't have the list and we need to start somewhere. So I agree that it's a good starting place.
Okay.
But it does get messy later on. So 10 years.
It will do, but also bear in mind that, you know, we're only funded for another 3 months. So do you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not something that's going to continue beyond that, I wouldn't have thought, because I don't see how.
Well, hopefully we can create something that can continue. But yeah, for now.
Yeah, no, realistically, nobody else is going to do it if we don't. And if we're not funded, it's not going to happen. So, you know what I mean?
So just to swing back around onto the Jeremy's categorization. So that Miro board, if anyone's looked at it, splits decision making up into like different decisions, basically. So like Kendrick, I think, said, not everything needs a vote. That kind of does give that split. It says, if it's this kind of decision that needs to be made, it needs to go to a vote. If it's this kind of decision that's made, it can be given to a smaller group of elected people. If it's this type of thing, it can go this way. It can just be decided by an individual, let's say. So it does a good job of actually analyzing what governance actually is and the levels of decision making you'd need in order to legitimately enact those decisions. So it's quite an interesting Miro board if people want to dig into it. And it would be interesting to, as we find parameters, attach a suggested governance model to that particular parameter.
On that point, I wouldn't say that, yeah, you can categorize parameters based on the governance models it should go with. But one thing we did start at the end of, I don't know, July or something, or at least try to categorize or pinpoint the location of parameter in the full scope of Catalyst. Well, if you take a Catalyst as a product, then in what stage this parameter happens, or in which roles or functions this parameter change is happening. I think that is another side of what I'm really interested to look into, and I'm even down to work alone if others don't want to continue to figure that out. I mean, and that is.
I think we have included that in the spread in the Google form about what we're asking people about. So would it be like who is affected by it? Would that be a way to cover that, or?
It's actually both sides, yeah. Kind of like who takes the decision and who is affected by it.
Yeah, that the governance what Phil mentioned, that will be who takes it, and the other side of the work on Miro board, finding the location of the parameter that represents a visual look what it affects.
I mean, there is another element to it, and that is kind of, I give you an example and you understand where I'm coming from. And it's rhetorically, I don't even know whether that parameter change in itself actually happened. But there was one discussed in the DREP training, which said, if you want to get paid effectively as a voter, you have to cast at least 30 votes. Yeah. And if that was different before, then that's for sure a parameter change. But then the question in itself is, whom does it affect? It's the voters. And was it communicated? Well, not everyone is listening to every DREP presentation or so. And it wasn't really clear what stage of it was. Was it a proposal? Was it just a thought? I feel that IOG sometimes is kind of throwing some spaghetti at the wall and sees what sticks. And then they run with it. And I said, oh, we told you. But all you see initially is kind of like a bunch of spaghetti at the wall, and you don't really know which one of that is going to fall down and which one is going to stick.
Well, this is kind of what the point of doing this work is. Can I just... I don't know if we've lost, I think we're backtracking over stuff we've already decided. We already spent a bit of time going through what we should ask about a parameter change. Like, for instance, where was it socialized? Where was it? So this is already covered, I feel.
The point I try to make is it should also be clear how it was communicated.
Yeah,
that's as part of the recording of it, not So
that's part of what we're asking.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
One thing to say though is that if we do send this out to the community as a Google form, obviously a lot of times people are going to say, well, I don't know the answer to that. So we are going to have to do some research in order to get things into the spreadsheet. So it feels like it could be quite a lot of work. Are we up for that?
It's definitely interesting. But I did notice on the spreadsheet, there's like giant sentences that make up a parameter, right? So it is going to be interesting what we actually decide is a parameter and then how deep that goes.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's like parameters within parameters and this sorts of stuff.
That's true.
So part of the way to make this easier on ourselves was to identify not just all parameters that people can think of, but rather look at the major parameters that have already caused waves in the community and look at any parameters that are announced during the formation of this group. So that's always been kind of my thinking of how we would focus in on what parameters we're watching, which is the actual ones that are changing as we're watching. So that then we basically report. I mean, most of them for now will be implemented by IOG, but then we can say, well, how could have this been? Like that can then form some work of future groups and peoples and discussions of how could we take those parameters and next time we need to change them, what would we do?
Yeah,
Sorry, Alison, go on.
I completely agree with what Phil just said. I think we narrow it down by focusing on the ones that are changing, which dovetails exactly with what I've been reporting on the town hall slides. And I also wanted to point out, and first with apologies, because although the earlier start time usually will give me more flexibility, today I do have a hard stop at the top of the hour. But on the subject of parameter changes and oversight, I'm actually in a similar position as George and the challenge settings, in that I just realized I'm very deeply involved in a parameter change, which is this project I've been working on to bring self-sovereign identity DIDs and verifiable credentials to the proposal assessors. And it looks like we'll do a proof of concept in Fund 10. So that's a parameter change. And in fact, with the potential to be quite a big one. So on the one hand, I wanted to throw that out there as a possible test case in terms of talking about Vanessa's point around a proposal for a structure on sufficient community consultation, because I'm very focused on that. How do I ensure that I have sufficient community consultation, including the fact that the proposal was already voted on? On the other hand, I want to flag it as a parameter change where I'm involved, not with the oversight, not with my oversight hat on, but with the, implementation hat on.
We've discussed this, Alison, and I've discussed similar things with George, that if you're creating a proof of concept and therefore expanding the experiment, it's not really a parameter change until it gets rolled across everyone. So until it's a thing that's decided and then everyone has to operate under, it's not really a parameter change, right? So that, at least that's the way I see it. So if you're like, the way you proposed it in your proposal, you were proposing a parameter change and your proposal got voted in, but there was no mechanism to actually implement that parameter change. So now you've changed it. So you're going to do a proof of concept, which is just an experiment, right? It's just going to, it's going to show something and you're going to get some results.
It is, but it will have a real world impact on live proposal assessors' interaction with the process.
But,
I mean,
but you don't have to do it, right? Like it will be it's a choice, yeah? It's I go down this path or I go down this path, no?
True, but I mean, now we're getting a bit nitpicky on what the parameter is, and quite frankly, I'd be happy if everyone agreed it wasn't a parameter change, and therefore I didn't have to worry about the conflict of interest. But theoretically, the PA login registration pop-up will be changed.
But I can still do the old way, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But
so
the registration questions will be different. And is that a parameter change? If not, great.
the
although
registration questions would be, because everyone has to answer them. But if the next step isn't, because it's still a choice. So it's not,
Yeah.
You're not affecting the entire system. You're experimenting and creating a branch of the existing system. And that's kind of what I've been trying to get George and Tommy and yourself to kind of understand, that if you're like, everyone's just experimenting here, right? So we don't want to start saying everyone's experiments are parameter changes. It's just when someone makes a decision and that decision affects the entire system, that's a parameter. So yes, if someone has to answer a bunch of different questions, that's a parameter change, and how that decisions got made of how those questions got asked, that's important to report on. But the fact that someone then chooses to use an alternative system as an experimental system, that's not a parameter change, in my opinion.
Agree. I sort of feel like we're at the top of the hour now, and we've got still quite a lot that we haven't talked about. Can we agree something about how to progress the idea of sending out to the community for parameter changes they have noticed? Or do we think we should no longer do that, and we should maybe select which parameters we're going to focus on?
I think having an open discussion and let people put in parameters that they're seeing is a good idea.
Cool.
But whether we then report on them, other than just say that's something that's happening or that someone's noticed, I think that's a matter for our discussion in this space.
Yeah. Any other?
Yeah, I'd rather have it also open, and then maybe allocate 5 or 10 minutes in oversight if there are new changes or people who suggest to come forward, that they are oversight what community noticed or what was shared, which was not recorded previously, and then we can like have our own sentiment on what priorities these have, how much we should look into them, and then the people who watch and care about the governance oversight of what's happening, they also have the opportunity to gauge the interest of okay, this parameter is a new parameter, and they're gonna even focus and research more into that. They're gonna ask questions, they're gonna go somewhere on or vice versa, that this was mentioned, but this is thought to be irrelevant for now or out of scope. And if they have issues with that, they can have their own spin-offs, like to do the research, or just help to, even if it's a high priority, maybe they can so help along. So having this like an open conversation, and if you already collected that, they will not share it in the meeting itself.
Okay, so I will put a link to the form in Discord. We can check that it's all okay, and if it is, it can go out early next week. Does that sound doable? We can start sharing that, and it should probably go on the next town hall slides, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And I'm getting distracted because I'm jumping off here, but I'll circle back on getting that onto the slides. See you all soon.
See you, Alison.
Bye, Alison.
Okay, and then I guess, Andre, we just need to have a chat, maybe offline somewhere, about
Is he still here?
oh, he has
He's
gone
gone as well.
Right, yeah, sorry.
Thank
No,
you,
I
everyone.
was just going to say about how we get the information from the forms into the spreadsheet that we're going to use kind of permanently, rather than.
The other point I wanted to make is that asking for community inverted commas participation doesn't usually yield a lot of results. So we need to be realistic of how much people will actually input into this process. Like, we need to have it so that people can participate, but I don't feel like we're going to get thousands of parameters getting logged.
No, but it's good that it's there, and also we can log things that way, and I'm sure we will notice them.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the Catalyst Circle oversight? I
Yeah, of
think there's a
course.
big issue
I mean,
about the election that
yes,
we
I think there
kinda
is. I mean,
skipped, and
are we happy with what we've said on this? Because
I would actually add one more thing
go
next to the field statement of scoping down to changes. I would want to actually put a bit emphasis on everything related to proposal assessor and veteran proposal assessor parameters like weights and ratings and process. I have feeling that the way we have scaled and the way this system is used now is ineffective. And if we have a better view on the parameters and options, what we could do there, we may be able to improve that situation.
Okay, cool. I mean, that's definitely something to look at. Yeah. I mean, the other thing that was on the agenda was DREPs, but I think just to remind everybody that the white paper meetings are up, so go and have a look at them. And I think it's all kind of going as it should. So yeah, circle oversight. We agreed that those working on this are Tivo, Kenrick and me. And we talked last meeting about various things to do with the after town halls that were happening at the end of June, but a lot of things have moved on since then. The CCV4 election looks like it's going to be on drip drops. And there's questions about what oversight we can have or should have, and whether we want to have oversight of the election design itself, because I don't think it's fully decided yet, definitely, how voting power is going to be determined and whether it's one wallet, one vote or whatever, but I think it is going to be. Kenrick.
yeah, so I'll just give some impressions. I think drip drops can do a good job on the election, but I have big concerns about the structure of what's been decided from what I understand. Here's what I understand has happened is that Circle 3 was charged with putting together a new election. And then, of course, we had this disruption and we now have Circle 3.2. Circle 3.2 took it upon themselves to redesign the circle, right? You know, they didn't just prepare for an election. They decided to completely redesign the circle. And as I understand it, over the last 2 weeks, their redesign, and I don't know exactly all the events that happened, but it wasn't received well. And so now they're proposing, as I understand it, to go forward where there's going to be 5 open seats and none of those circle members will have a defined role as to what their responsibility is on the circle and who they're representing in the community.
I think it's a self-defined role.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a good idea. I think this is, this has the potential to really exasperate manipulative politics within the circle. Because people are going to competing for representation. They're not going to be clear what their responsibilities are. There's going to be gaps. I don't know how this came about, but I think it's very problematic.
Can I just say that because of the time and also because of, you know, we're oversight, we shouldn't get into discussing here like what we think or don't think about what's been decided. I think we need to look at what kind of oversight we think we should have and how we're going to move that forward. Tivo.
Okay, the last sentence made it harder to reassemble my words in my mind.
Sorry.
But well, it comes back to something we talked about in parameter changes. And one of the meetings we had where we wanted to, in order to kind of know the effect rate and where do we look for parameter changes, we looked into which are the official roles and functions in Catalyst. And we already got the dilemma, is an Catalyst circle an official role in the current state and moving forward. And this, and yeah, and what just Kenrick said is like, it's very related, because if there is no functional groups or it's self-defined, but the Catalyst is defined, there are functional groups and none of these are represented. Nobody represents proposal assessors, or nobody represents what theory of changes we could do, or like have this place where they could take their information about specific function and they want to allow some change, then it misses, it will completely miss that oversight or that group or that organization. And then we are again up to the waiting proposals. And I think how it relates back to the oversight, it will make us very hard to like basically do an oversight if there's because I think what we should oversight is how the community is governing Catalyst and how we make changes there and how we collaborate to improve it. But if it's, yeah, well, technically we will still can have an oversight of what Catalyst Circle is doing, but do we care if it's not an official role? And it's going to be a very conflicting topic moving forward.
Can I just point of information before I take the next person, is that when you're saying that there are functional groups and they're not represented, we don't know that yet, because somebody might decide to stand on a platform of, I want to represent VPAs, for instance. We don't know what people will stand in order to do their, as Phil said, their self-defined seats. And also just point of information, there is, you know, I've been doing sort of documenting the process that has led us to here. So one of the questions I had, is that enough, or does CGO need to do more to oversee what that process was and is ongoing? Kenrick, is your hand up from before? Or no?
Yeah, no, I wanted to follow up more because, you know, I guess well, it seems to me that if we're an oversight group and we see problems, then there's maybe even a potential to try to put a report together, what we think the problems are. And I think that, as I said, you probably have more insight than I do, Vanessa, about the process that led to this. But one of the things I say is that the point of good processes is to get good outcomes. And at this stage, I think we have a terrible outcome. And now that is a personal opinion, but I'm going to state it clearly. We went from clearly defined roles. It's not perfect. I think there could have been improvements made to the way the circle is defined, but we've gone from well-defined roles on the circle to a new design that was not getting traction, from what I understand, in terms of community acceptance, to no design. There's no design apparently for the Circle 4. And as Steve has pointed this out, is that in environments where you don't have structure, where you don't have definitions, that's where manipulation becomes a big problem, and where you end up getting sort of counterproductive interactions. So I think as an oversight committee, we should take this problem seriously and maybe even have a meeting on that issue as to whether this is a good outcome, whether we should support it, and if it's not, what are the appropriate interventions to go.
One thing I would ask, Henrik, is do you think we could do that before we know what the outcome actually is?
Yes, we have to.
Elected.
Yes.
How can we know? You're talking about poor outcomes. How can we know what the outcome is when?
Well, the outcome is no design.
Sorry, say again.
We have an outcome. We have an outcome. Right now, we have an outcome in which it's decided that the next circle will not have a design.
I've got to say, though, that you're saying we have no design, and that's not accurate, because the approach of like self-defined seats is a design. It might not be one you agree with, but it is one. So I think it would be a mistake to call it no design.
And I'll also add that as an oversight group, I don't want to be making like, I can't remember what word you said, but we shouldn't have an opinion.
Report of problems.
Like, you can have an opinion as a member of this group, but as a group, I don't think we are having opinions on what happens. I mean, we can report on it. And on that reporting side of things, I think the idea would be to identify the parameters that have been adjusted in the circle in line with what we're currently doing. I mentioned a few weeks, maybe the last meeting, I can't remember exactly, but that was kind of what I was hoping the circle would be doing. We would be identifying what circle parameters are so that the next circle could look to adjust them. But it seems like they've gone ahead and just adjusted, but that's where it's up to. But if we spend the time actually working out what those parameters were, as in circle parameters, so for instance, from firm categorized seats to non-firm, we've obviously discussed the voting mechanism and this sorts of things, how the voting mechanism was decided. These are the type of things that I think we can look at and report on.
Would you suggest that we did that through the kind of parameter changes process?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Well, sort of, yeah. I mean, so one of the parameters of Catalyst is that a circle exists, right? So that parameter is currently on and has been decided by IOG essentially. So should like on the top level, that's the parameter change. Yeah, it exists. And then the second parameter is that group should decide how the next group is decided. Yeah, so that's another parameter change.
Yeah, but the other side, we have an oversight of the circle itself. So I'm not sure it falls under, I mean, it is a parameter, like you're saying, but the parameter committee has a lot of other things that they're looking at. And so we've got a separate group.
Yeah, it's a sub parameter that needs its own attention. I totally agree. I wouldn't throw it under the work of parameter, because this circle thing is very contentious at the moment and very necessary for oversight, I think. But that just means we need to be clear on what we want to report, and how that looks, so that the community can be more aware. But again, you know, Vanessa's writing up these the meetings, and they're available, but there's not a lot of community interest in following it. There's some, and there's some very strong opinions in the space. So I guess it's just awareness.
I think there is one that maybe CGO could do more on this to sort of help people become aware. If we're defining that as a parameter change, and Alison is talking in the slides about parameter changes, I wonder where, you know, if we're okay to do that and to say, I think that will cause some pushback from Circle, maybe.
But it doesn't matter. It's just a parameter, right? We're just saying that it's a parameter.
Yeah.
I would put it into the report.
I was thinking more about town hall slides.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The town
I
hall.
see.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the town hall. The town hall report, but yeah, the town hall slides.
I feel the most simple thing we can do related to Circle is just observe the things that are changing, see what, you know, if they make a statement of why it's being changed, keep a note of that, and you've got this kind of log of changes, what's happening, and we are making sure it's concise, easy to read, and these are the things you need to know about of why things have changed, potentially why if they've mentioned it, and maybe the process they took, and that is like the bare bones of like, this is what's going to happen, and then anything built on top of that is kind of like, what capacity we have to be like, oh, here's the pros and cons of these two approaches, and you know why this may or may make sense from an analytical point of view.
Yeah.
I've been asking the question: has it been decided that they're turning into a decision-making body, or is it still a human sensory array?
No, not fully. I mean, there's been hints, but no, not really.
Okay. I mean, that's the primary parameter that I'm worried about. Once that, if it decides that it's going to turn into a decision-making body without any mechanism beyond itself deciding this seems like a pretty totalitarian sort of activity. So I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, just circling back to what Kenrick, what you were saying before, you were, I think, feeling that we should be intervening more. And I just want to check. I think most people are saying that that's not our role. Do you feel okay with that?
That's fine. I respect what you're saying. I'm maybe take a little bit different view that I think where appropriate, if we came to an agreement, it might be okay to express an opinion about decisions that are made in the community. But if others feel that's overstepping our role, that's fine.
Could I suggest that maybe, I mean, one of the things from documenting the meetings that I've become concerned about is that they have often said, right, we need to take this concept or this idea or this decision out to the community. And then I felt that there hasn't been as much done as there could have been. I wonder if CGO should help be, you know, sort of be helping to inform the community about what's been decided, rather than taking like a stance on it or having an opinion, but just,
sure,
you know,
that would be
I've been doing what I can, but what else could we do?
Would you add these things into the town hall slides and the newsletter?
I mean, yeah, I don't want to tread on Circle's toes, and I've sort of said, oh, we shouldn't, because they will, and then they've not. So I don't know.
I don't see an issue reporting on things. I think that's what we're here for, right? We're here to see what we see and share that with an audience, with the community. I mean, this concept of the community always makes me ponder, because there is no such thing, and there never will be. There's people and there's a giant community, but you're not ever communicating with the community. You're communicating with the people who are following those communication channels that they follow. So it's always difficult to do this.
I mean, it still sort of feels like we haven't got a clear line on exactly what the circle oversight part of this would be aiming to produce or do. I mean, I also don't know what oversight we want to have of the election itself, because obviously being as it's on drip drops, there's a lot of interrogable information there. Are we aiming to look at it in any way or not?
Well, I have two comments on that. As far as the Fund 8 goes, I feel like we're close to being complete with what we agreed to do. And those meetings that we held in June were our principal role. Because I don't remember the timeline, but you know, it's my understanding that either this month or next month, we complete our work for Fund 8. Isn't that correct?
I mean, it should be, but then if it'd be next month because we've had a month off, so.
Well, well,
It was a 3-month commitment, I guess, and we agreed to take a month off while the voting thing was not
I
much.
mean,
was happening.
I think, to be fair, the DREPs stuff, because it has been going on throughout, will probably complete sooner than the other deliverables. So
yeah.
Okay, the question here is then, where do we want to cut off oversight of Catalyst Circle, right? Do we want to end it with this is then how the process, this is how they go to voting, or we include it in who gets to be voted, how many people decided what was the results, who get the position, and do we cut it there, or we then go even deeper and then analyze like 1 month into how they work, because
yeah,
I think that
I think
also can happen.
our work probably end at the vote, and reporting on how the vote went and that sort of stuff. I don't think we've got any more resource to follow the next circle into their early
No,
stage,
certainly
because we
not.
won't be able to follow it beyond.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
If we end it with vote.
Oh, sorry, Tivo, can I just make one quick suggestion? Is that an awful lot of that oversight is being done by the oversight of Catalyst Circle proposal. So I did just think, judging by the last meeting, it looks like remuneration is becoming a big issue. And we've got Kenrick, who's already heavily involved in discussing that. Would it be better for us to put our focus on that? Because it feels like something that I can't fully give oversight of with the oversight of Catalyst Circle project, because I haven't got the resources and the time and energy to do that. So it feels like it could be something that we could make our focus.
Well, I'm not sure, as I said, I'm not sure about the scope of the whole group. So, and I'm not sure that trying to decide on one thing to focus on is the right way to do this. With regard to the compensation, if you want to provide a brief update of what you've observed, I can comment on it with regard to the input I provided earlier and what I observed.
What now? I don't know if that's that useful
Okay,
to do now
fine.
within this meeting, because
Yeah,
time's
right.
ticking.
Yeah.
It's all in the updates on the Circle Git book, but it's not been decided yet. It's more about the tenor of the discussion that I found interesting, and kind
Okay.
of the different
I'll try to take a
stances
closer
that
look
people
at
are
it.
taking on whether and how Circle should be paid. And it just feels like, as sort of a philosophical issue, that is something that we could have oversight of, but it's definitely outside of the scope of oversight of Catalyst Circle in terms of the more granular he said, she said of documenting meetings. So it felt like something that we could, since you were saying, Kenrick, that you think we should take stances and have opinions, it felt like something that maybe this group could do, that we could look at how that develops and what is decided about pay and take a stance on it. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting, especially when the people deciding other people getting paid. That seems to be, I mean, that's how politicians run their thing, isn't it? So
Yeah.
It seems like a decision they're kind of pushing can down the road situation. So I don't know when that will map up with when we want to finish up with
Yeah.
CGO stuff. So
that's such a-
it could be time sensitive. Obviously, the vote will be around for and what goes in the next few weeks.
I mean, they're going to have to make a decision on pay soon.
do they have a proposal in Fund 9?
Nah, it's not about, I think, yeah, all I'm going to say is just check the documentation, really, because I don't think we've got time to go into it in great detail here. But I'm feeling really conscious that it's now past and we haven't. Really. So what I'm just going to look at is, first of all, on the agenda, number 8, Catalyst Weekly newsletter. I'll put a draft in Telegram. Can people please comment? Proposal reporting, Stephen is going to be doing as normal. And oh yeah, there was just that little thing from Kenrick from before, right? There is.
You can drop that.
I think, I don't know, it'd be nice to try and talk about it async. If you want to start a conversation, I'll join in. But any other business?
Yeah, maybe sometime, but I won't have time this month. But
all right.
you
So
know,
any
it's an
other
interesting
business,
topic.
and then I'll switch the recording off, and we can.
I added one more statement under the Scotland Circle oversight that for the last discussion, that I don't think that having an oversight statements for these payments will have an impact compared to a work way of having a list of parameters that has a huge impact. But having a list of statements from oversight that I think their payment model is bad because I think this is better.
I see. Yeah, I see your point. I mean, I guess I was thinking more about trying to collate community opinion and, you know, but yeah, I do see your point. All right, well, I think we've kind of got through it all. I'm going to take the recording off and stop sharing now. And if people want to stay and have a chat for half an hour, that would be cool.